Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Future Dimensions 360. As you guys know, in our last tutorial, we had learned how to use state in class-based component. What are the uses of state and what are the scenarios where you can use state. In our current tutorial, we will be talking about setState method in detail, how we can use setState. Let's go ahead and learn how we can use setState method in many different ways. So for that, first of all, let me explain you regarding one extension of Visual Code. So go ahead towards extension and try to write out React/Redux ES7. So this is the extension we are using to use code snippets or shortcuts to do our code. It will be really helpful for you to do programming, or it will save your a lot of time to do some sort of programming code. So as you guys know, I was being telling you to create functional component by using RFC, and for using class based component you can use RCE. So these kind of shortcuts are coming from this extension. So that's it. Let's move ahead and try to focus in our current topic for today. By the way, before moving forward, I'll tell you regarding functional component handling state will be explained in the coming series of hooks. So don't worry about it. Stay tuned. Try to learn class-based components in the beginning. Later on, we will be coming up with the functional-based component to make it more clear and more better for you. Let's go ahead and try to come into our old code, and I'll be creating new component for today's topic, that is counter.js. We are going to create a counter, an increment counter in this component. I'll say RCE, the shortcut to create class based component, and I can say it's counter. Let's go ahead and try to import that one in our application or app.js file by using starting less than sign for nested component and write coun, and here we go. So it's imported now. Let me move forward to my browser and try to access the project. You guys see the counter is there. Let me go ahead and try to make it a little bit bigger, and for that one what I'll do is I'll just wrap that one with wrap the sorry and wrap it with h1 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 tag, and I can say closing h1 tag and counter equal to, that's it. So here we are going to add our counter state. So for adding state, for creating a default constructor, there is a shortcut called rconst. Okay, rconst will create a basic or startup constructor for you with super method and a basic state object as well with empty params. So I'll be passing one counter here as parameter and giving the value as 0. This counter, how we will access, as we told you in the last tutorial, by using curly bracket. You can say this dot state dot counter. So as you guys see now, my counter is 0. Let me go ahead and try to build some functionality on top of it. So I'll be adding one plus counter button or increment button down. As soon as you will hit the increment button, in the on click event, it will call an increment handler and increment the counter. Let's go ahead and do it. So let me first add a button, and I'll say increment, and I'll click and on. I will pass an on click listener to it, and in this on click listener, in the arrow function, I'll say this dot increment. Call this dot increment. That's it. So this in dot increment, I'll say here create this function please inside the class, and that's very good. So try to update the state here and console.log. I'll say this dot, sorry, this is an extra t, this dot state dot counter equals to this dot state dot counter plus 1. Let me go ahead and do console dot log, and this dot state dot counter. Very perfect, very easy. Let me go ahead and try to see in my console as well and in my user interface as well. So here is my console and here is my user interface. I'll go and I'll hit the increment button and I will see what are the impacts of that. So as you guys see that here I can see 1, but in UI it's still 0. Another one, see the counter is incrementing, but in the UI the counter is not incrementing. So what is happening here, when you are mutating the state directly, when you are updating the state directly, the UI or user interface doesn't know the value for the counter, or React will re-render your component values only if you will use SetState method to update the state value. If you will update the state value directly, React don't know that he need to update the state value in the UI or no. So keep this point in your mind. Never update the state of any component directly without setState function. So let me go ahead and try to access the setState function. This dot setState, and in the setState I'll say just do one thing. I'll pass this object. You can pass the object as a parameter counter, counter counter for the first one, and then I'll say this dot state dot counter plus 1. Let me hit enter and go to my console. I'll clear the console and in the browser, and as you guys know, this is my current current state, and let's see what will happen once I'll create hit the increment button. So let's go ahead and hit the, you guys see that it's incrementing twice. See, it's incrementing twice. Why it's incrementing twice? Why always it's incrementing twice? It's incrementing twice because I forgot to remove this one. Very sorry for that. Let me remove it, and let's go ahead and try to remove this one, and let's hit increment one more time. So now you guys are seeing like it's incrementing perfectly, like see 1 2 3, but see here it's 3, but here in the log it's showing 2. One count, like counter, when counter is 3 it's showing 2 here, when counter is 2 it's showing 1 here, when counter is 1 it's showing 0 here in the console. Let me increment one more time. See, now the counter is 4, but in the log it's showing 3. Now the counter is 5, but in the console it's showing 4. This is because the React.js is you can say it's working on event loop, or it's non-blocking process, same as Node.js. So it's an asynchronous process. When you will call this .state function, it's actually this function is actually telling React, please take the value from here, from the counter, and go to the UI and update the value. So this process is consuming some time, and this is asynchronous process. So what React is doing, telling to this function, take this object and update it in the state, and React will move forward to the next line. So in the next line, this counter value is still 1, or on the value is not yet updated in the setState function, and the next line is already called. So that's why it's showing one state behind. So in case you want this value to show that updated value, like for example there is some scenario you want that updated value to be called after setting the state. So for that one, what you have to do is you have to pass another parameter, and in this parameter you will be passing a callback function. I'll simply pass one arrow function, and here you can just say same console.log for the meantime, and in the beginning just add one message that I am called after setting the state. So this function will be called after the finishing of set state. The React will call this function. So there are some scenarios in the programming where you are setting up the state and you have to do some sort of changes after finishing the state setup. So in that scenarios, you should pass the callback into the setState function. Let me go ahead and show you now. Let me clear the console and reload the function, reload the project. It's already reloaded it, it's 0. So let me hit increment. You can see the 0 is called first from line number 19, but the asynchronous method line number 17 is called after the setting up of the state, and the value is 1. I hope guys this is clear for you. Let me go ahead and try to tell you another scenario. Let's say this is just a normal increment, like you are doing one increment. Let me say I have to increment 5 times on every click. So what I will do is I'll say this dot increment. Okay, call this function 3, 4, 5 times. Here I'll say please call this function. So whenever you will click on increment, it will increment 5 times as per the code. Let's go ahead and see what will happen. Let me clear the console. I'll hit the increment. As you guys see, 5 times everything is called, but my counter is updated 1 time only. What is happening here? Here what is happening when you call this increment is not finished. Like your counter value is not updated because it's an asynchronous process. You are calling the next one, as it's a very fast process. So before updating any value, all 5 methods are called and they are taking this value as 0 always, and they are incrementing 1 only. So the solution for this is, instead of passing object as a parameter, you guys need to pass function as a parameter. Let me pass another arrow function here as a parameter, and in return I'll just say return the statement, return the object, the updated object. So this function is taking previous state. So previous state is the state that is up once you are calling this function. So the state from this one will appear, will passed here as a parameter automatically in React. So let's go ahead and check it out how it will work. I think let me remove this return. It will work. Why this giving, it's giving error? Sorry for this one. Because of this it's giving error. I'll say return and I'll pass a function as an object as return, and same value I'll say counter, and previous state I'll say previous state dot counter. Counter in the previous state plus 1. Give plus 1 to that one. So let me go ahead and try it out how it will work. Let's say I'll hit an increment. As you guys see, it works perfectly as expected. But here still it's giving the same thing 5, and this 5 is calling in the same time. It's because React, what it's doing is it's taking the multiple set state call as single call and taking all the value and join together and push them in the UI. This is actually the functionality of React. Don't go into much deeper as this series is for the beginner. So let's focus in this. Like if you want to update the values multiple time in a loop or multiple time at the same call, you should use previous state. Okay, in case you want to update this value that is passed from your parent component from the props, so you can pass another parameter as props here also. And for example, you can say props dot increment value. So this is the parameter passed from the parent component to the child component. It's just an example. You guys can go on and do your research as well and your programming practice as well on top of it. If you have any question regarding this, please do let me know. I'm here always available to help you. Let me go ahead and summarize what we have learned today. So in the set state, what we have learned today is always make use of set state, never modify the state directly. code has to be executed whenever the code has to be executed after the state has been updated. So you guys need to place the code in the callback and pass it as an argument of set state function. Which argument? Second argument of the set state function. When you guys have to update the state based on the previous value, like we are doing on our last example, incrementing 5. So in that type of scenario, what you guys need to do is, instead of passing a regular object, you guys need to pass a function, a callback function where you can mutate the state. So that's pretty good for today's tutorial. I hope you guys like it. Please don't forget to subscribe and like our channel. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.